So, what have we learned so far? We've learned that the Creator created a will to receive. He then developed that will to receive by 4 phases of direct light, so that the light that created the will to receive existence from absence continued to influence the will to receive. The will to receive under the influence of the light went through 4 phases of development. When it reaches the 4th phase, it feels shame, and then it closes itself from receiving the light as pleasure. It doesn't want to feel the light that way, because the shame is a sense of disparity of form from the light, from the giver, from the creator, that doesn't allow him to actually bear that situation, and then he must restrict himself. But that is not enough. He later decides that if he simply restricts himself, then it's actually the same action of the will to receive, that it's unpleasant, so he restricts himself. But the action of bestowal should actually be in now, after the restriction, when he is separate from the giver and there's seemingly no contact between them, he can decide how much he receives, specifically because the giver wants him to receive. And then he makes a decision. That decision that he decides how much to receive, and it's only for the sake of the giver, that is called Masach, screen, and Orh Hozer, returning light. And this is the kind of decisions that he makes, how to do, how much, and so forth. And thus he makes the action of receiving in order to bestow, which is not considered receiving, rather complete bestowal. And that is because the intention completely and totally changes the nature of the action. That is because he makes the action only after he knows well and feels why he's doing that. And so the purpose determines his entire feeling. If the feeling is to bestow to the upper one, even by receiving from the upper one, he feels that he is actually giving, not receiving, and therefore reception becomes complete bestowal. And thus he receives in order to bestow. First portion, the maximum he could after the restriction, and that Partzuf, meaning the structure of the will to receive that was capable to receive the fulfillment in order to bestow, is called Partzuf Galgalta. And the creature continues, and when he feels that he received as much as he could, he stops. And in stopping, he feels like he hasn't concluded the action, because the giver wants to give him infinity. What's infinity? According to his will to receive, the giver wants to fulfill that will to receive unboundedly, and he cannot receive in order to bestow back to the giver, if not only as a thin line. Let's say from 100 ton, he can receive only 1 gram. And that means that it doesn't have an actual relation with the giver in that way. If he first received infinitely, then he received. So he basically did everything the upper one wanted him to do. The upper one wanted him to receive, and he received. Now, because the fact that he made a restriction is because he felt bad about it, but not forced by the upper one. As Barasulam writes, that the shame happens indirectly. Obviously, it's still influenced by the Creator, but not directly. The host doesn't want the guest to be ashamed, but the guest is ashamed because he sees that he is receiving from the host who is completely whole and he is in lack. So he feels that this one gram that he received, say from 100 million tons, doesn't make any difference. On the contrary, when he received at first, he at least did what the host wanted. And so part of the action was at least whole on the part of the host, because on his part there is no limitation. So he restricted himself and thus as if detached himself from the host. It's as if you're kicking the host. It's considered a very rude or severe, as it's referred to, action. And so from the entire table, what is he taking? This 1 gram. Imagine this great, huge table and you're only taking a crumb. And so this action even drives him further apart from the host, more than the restriction, because the restriction, he just stopped himself. Now he makes a certain action that says, this is what you're worthy opposite the giver. 1 opposite 100 million, let's say. And that is really nothing. And this indicates his bestowal to the host and the condition in relation to the condition that he set for himself, that I want to be after the shame, after the restriction, guarding oneself and wanting to bring contentment to the giver. And so he basically does what? What kind of pleasure? What kind of contentment? To whom? And so, when the bitush pnim makif, the beating of the surrounding and inner light, happens, and he feels this action of 1 gram as opposed to 100 million ton, then he realizes that this action is no good for anyone, not for him or for the host or anything. This action led him to the recognition of evil, to recognize just how truly lowly his state is, incapable of anything, unable, and so forth. And so he sees that he cannot remain in that state, because he'll never attain the purpose of creation there. He can never make an actual giving to the host, and so he purifies, decides to purify, meaning return to the previous state. And so the Masach arises from the tabul to the peh, expelling all the lights that were received from the peh to the tabul. They're now expelled on the way back from tabul to the peh. And the Masach stands at the peh once again. And that's where we are. Or more. Or we went further. No, actually we stopped even before. The bitush pnim umakif, the beating of the surrounding light and inner light.